connected and must cooperate. Oh, quite interesting. You would say, wow, that's an old thing? That's something we want to, what's going on here? That sounds okay. We're connected and we need to cooperate. But as Gilbert talked about, that what we see, and I see as God transcending himself in a new day, in a new age, what we would like to move towards is to really understand that we are one and we choose to co-create. That we really do identify and understand that we are the divine emanation of heaven, of God, and that together as one, we choose to create our community and our destiny. But we need each other. The profound aspect of my dream was the fact that, number one, this new heaven and this new earth that I was feeling and crying over in joy that I could experience was not because I was with the thing, it was because we were all together and had in fact generated the solution that God manifested because we worked as a community. So this sums up essentially what I'm talking about with regards to moving from the old to the new. You've got to identify this stuff. You've got to think about it, you've got to recognize it, process it, and realize, are you going to make a philosophical break with things in the past that worked for 20 years possibly? They worked for us. They got us to where we are today by the grace of God. But we're moving in a new direction. We're moving with the pulsations of the Aquarian age. We're moving with these pulsations that are absolutely critical. God is moving on. He is not waiting. Are we going to seize the moment and seize the new opportunity, to seize the new consciousness that is required of us to come up higher? As Archangel Michael said, are you standing still? Because we're moving. And here's a very sobering thought. If we don't move as a community, and we are now accountable because we can see what's going on. And we know what we can do to attract 500 million light bearers. But if we don't act and we don't do those things that are going to attract and these new seekers and fulfill what the masters are desiring for this earth, we will have failed because we didn't seize the moment. We did not seize the opportunity in the day of our destiny to move forward. Now, let's talk a little bit about some other startling revelations that my team and Gilbert and the board have been seeing in the last couple months. And it deals with what you told us and what we're also seeing from what we're calling the light bearers. You know, the thing that we've had problems with at the headquarters is, can somebody please tell me what the zip code is for the light bearers? Because I'd like to send them a letter, invite them to come over, and try to get to them. You know, it's people. You know, these are real people, these light bearers. It's not some mythical body that just hangs out there. They actually are walking around and have jobs and are raising families and are seeking spiritual things. How do we find out where these people are? What do they do? What do they believe in? What are their values? What are their needs right now? Not what their needs were 20 years ago, because things have changed, folks, to a large degree. There's some very significant things going on in society right now, and those spiritual seekers are needing certain things that they're looking for. You heard from Deborah, you know, to pay $600,000, they have this one-on-one relationship with God. My God, we got it. I mean, all we have to do is package this thing. I want to speak about a quote from the Roeric teachings, which I think is very powerful. It's in the book New Age Community. How many of you have actually read that? You got to get this book. I mean, it's incredible. And what the Roeric said here is the community as fellowship can unprecedentedly accelerate the evolution of the planet. And it caught me for a moment in thinking, my God, this new universal fellowship level of affiliation, if we were able to just to do that right by itself, there's no pledges, there's no requirements to be part of this affiliation, we can change things very quickly. And then moving forward, there's been a question that Gilbert and the board have been asked over and over. It comes up, It burdens me like you can't believe, but I want to talk about it for a minute. And that is, how does all this stuff with re-energizing, re-engineering, all these terms, tell me how this has to do with anything with regards to the spiritual teachings? And I can honestly tell you that in all the research that I see and everything that I read about people who are developing community, looking at community, that community building is in fact a truly and fundamentally powerful, profound spiritual process. Because true community is built on the capacity for each one to be compassionate, to work with others, to live with others, to love and grow as a community. And I can tell you that every day I pray on my hands and knees to God, El Moria, give me the understanding of what it takes to spiritualize everything we're doing. And he gave this admonishment way back in the early beginnings. Many of you remember the dictation. He said, make sure you thread spiritualization throughout everything that you do. And I have never forgotten that. And it's something that we at headquarters continually look at in everything that we do. But there are two issues here that I want to just bring up real quickly that others have collaborated on with regards to how is this community building and spirituality related. First one is, when a group seeks to learn as a community, it simultaneously seeks psychological and spiritual growth for the organization. Community building is a process of learning and spiritual growth. You can't disconnect it. And these are some of the best minds embodied right now that are saying this, that understand this phenomenon. And the second point here is that such learning is a lifelong task, beginning with the organization's birth and continuing throughout its life cycle. So what begins to happen is we see, and you go back to Scott Peck, that the stages of growth from pseudo-community, where we pretend that we're a good community, but it's all surface. There's no real deep, authentic communication, one-on-one bonding going on with us with a lot of spiritual connection, which is true community, that we have to continually sustain and grow to stay in this level of true community. You just don't get there and it sustains itself. You actually have to have self-mastery and practice to keep it alive. So, and in fact, the process of community building, I believe, is truly and fundamentally spiritual. Now, let's move on with the issue of research and what our members are asking us. We held a meeting and held quite a bit of dialogue on this, both qualitatively and quantitatively. And what many people in our community, our members right now, have told us that what we need is training programs for leadership, management, teamwork, and how to deal with conflict. Now, for myself, when I went to Livingston and a few other communities, I never realized how important at least number 3 was. Because to a large degree, we are, we have to admit that we really need better facilitation skills in dealing with conflict as part of our community building. So in essence, we looked at this and we said, wow, this is really, these words mean something. And we have to think about this, because if this is the top priorities coming from our communities, what are we going to do about this? Because I'm asking myself the question, what has the organization done in the last 5 years to actually do any of this? And unfortunately, the answer is a big fat 0. The big one. It is something that we have to sit up and take note of and think about how we were going to do this. Now, you have to remember, at Ranch, it's quite amazing, because we got a lot of projects going on. And part of our going from the old to the new is that we actually have to start doing different things. And that's very hard, because we love doing the old things. We know how to do it very well. But we actually have to set up entirely new systems. We have to have new competencies. We have to have new programs. And we have to have new resources to do things that we've never done before. And this is one of them. Now, let's move to the next one, which I actually believe is critical. What I'm going to share with you right now is the research about what are these light bearers looking at. What have they said, and what do they want right now? What can we do that will attract and provide a need and a benefit for these people? You heard Murray, you heard Joubert talk about this group. They've been categorized, if you would, as cultural creatives. This is a group of people that statistically in numbers about 44 million. Now for those of you who are in marketing and all this stuff, that's a big number. That's a big number. The 44 million have some very specific issues and values. What I'd like to share with you are some of these that they have expressed. Number one, this is, in fact, their top number one issue that 92% of that group fully agree with. In other words, there is little dissension about this issue in this group of cultural creatives who are actually looking for spiritual community and belonging to some spiritual group. They need and they want to look at the issue of rebuilding neighborhoods and communities for sustainability. Now those words, every word up there is important because sustainability to me is a key one. In other words, this is a group of people who understand that what we do today is building the foundation for the generation to come and our children that we are trying to raise right now, and if we don't do something about it, they're going to inherit something that isn't going to be as good as it could be if they were to take action. So these cultural creatives are people that want to transform society. They are not couch potatoes. In fact, they do not like TV. They actually have a major distrust of TV. This is the group who buys books to a large degree. Secondly, an issue that they came up with, second most important, creating and maintaining caring relationships of all kinds, friends, family, etc. Creating and maintaining caring relationships. The other phenomena that Joubert and I have seen and have talked about that really burdens us is the following. Brand new people walk into a teaching center, a local group. They're on fire. They found the teachings. They read a book in Barnes & Noble, and they know that they have uncovered something that's deep. They walk into the local church community, and the level or the experience that they have moves them to walk out the back door as they walk in the front door. This is a sad commentary on what is going on at the local level. What are we doing that is simply as allowing that person to walk out the back door? Are we being compassionate enough? What's going on? What are the structures? What are the systems? What are the rules? What is going on that that person is walking out of that community? Brand new. And I hear it, listening in your table. Hey, you know, I love the Masters. I come only to the conferences, but I can't stand to go to my local community. That hurts beyond, I just can't tell you how much that hurts. You know, we have to figure out what's going on so that these people stay and participate. They have something to offer us. In fact, they're the ones that are probably going to help us change. Because remember Jesus saying, you know, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. And the last that are coming in probably have a lot more attainment probably than us that had to be around here for 10, 20 years to work through these things. We have to learn from them. We have to look at the opportunity that these new souls are bringing us. And it's an issue that really has got to be nailed because our growth right now is not healthy. Another issue that they brought up and in this caring relationships is the fact that they want to make a contribution to society. They are there to help others, period. This group has already been through inner child work. They've worked on themselves. They've been through Deepak Chopra. They've been on Wayne Dyer. They have read all that stuff. This is what they've been doing for 20 years. Been there, done that. And I've learned that the only way that you can love is by serving others and getting involved and being altruistic. staying home, doing my thing, and doing my meditation is not where it's happening. They have come to the point in self-actualization to realize that the more I give, the more love that actually comes to me because I'm serving, because I've actually figured it out, that we are one. And the more I do for others, it comes back tenfold. So I've got out of my cocoon, I've gotten off the couch potato, I've gotten away from being so focused on myself that I want a community that's out there serving others, that's got a mission to help deal with issues in our society, help growing others as the main focus of what's going on. And I submit to you that this is the balance that we have to have in our communities. It was another burden for me to hear a story about a young woman who recently was in a teaching center. She wanted to do some hospice work. And Joubert and I were in earshot of this conversation that was going on. The leader of the community, standing right there, telling this person, well, you know, you can't do this on Tuesday nights. You know, this is El Moria's night for decrees. How can you possibly be so selfish to go do hospice work on the night that El Moria needs you for decrees? Now, I tell you, I'm glad I was about 10 feet away from this situation, because I probably would have, you know, said some words that have been a little bit off balance. But here was a soul who was so fired up about hospice work, and that it was her mission and her life calling. And yet the unwritten rule here was that, you know, you got to be sitting in your seat in this teaching center paying your dues. And the tone of that conversation, it still rubs me, to be quite honest. But here I'm trying to bring up, again, the people that want to come into community, they want to be out there serving. They want to be in action. They've got to be doing things. Now again, the teachings is we've got to help them understand that if you did just a little bit of prayer work, a little bit of violet flame, you can do 30 times more when you're out there doing the action and serving and feeling the love. There's a balance that we have to understand here that will heighten things as we move forward. What are you going to do about abortion? Yes, prayer is one thing, but you also have to do some other things that can help these issues. But you have to physically do it. Maybe it's writing a letter. Maybe it's going to talk to your senator. There's things that you have to do to balance this. Moving on. Another thing that this group is interested in, and we've got it, we have all this, is they want to understand religious mysteries. My God, we have the esoteric teachings of all the 7 major religions. It's here. The founders of those religions are giving us our teachings now. They are, in fact, the true essence of the teachings. And the last one, there are actually more, but I'm giving you the top. These are the top issues that these souls of light, these light bearers that we have called them, have articulated as far as what is important for them in their lives. And the last one is they are looking for people that are self-actualized. Because remember, they've been through the inner child stuff. They've worked on themselves. They've meditated for 20 years. They've been through every diet possibly known to the New Age. And they've come to the realization that it all doesn't matter. It's only what I do to grow my heart, to serve others, and love to heal society. They have a sense of wanting people that feel that they have a personal uniqueness, that they understand their divinity. And the last thing is, they actually have a desire to belong to a spiritual group. Now, can you imagine any better group of people that we would want to actually go out and meet and talk with? There it is. We actually have everything in our grasp to offer to this market and to these people. What we have to figure out as a community is how are we going to package us, our community, our connectedness, and everything that we do to provide the open door for these people that are out there, that need the Master's teachings. They're at the right place in consciousness. They have the right attitude and understanding. We have it all. So I wanted to highlight this in terms of understanding our new beginnings, because we've got to focus on this to become more inclusive of these new people and their needs. Now, we looked at all that and we said, my God, you heard Joubert say yesterday that we actually figured out that we had to change a number of strategies in our organization and raise them to the top of the pack in terms of priorities and issues that we had to deal with as an organization. So we came up with the following goal. Many of you have seen this, but I'm bringing it back to your forefront because we are committed to this 100%. To provide training to teaching centers and study groups in community building, leadership, management, teamwork, and personal growth. And this is in the organizational plan. It's got a target date of April 30th, 1998. Now, as we move on, I'd like to share with you this issue about training. And I'm going to highlight the Goddess of Liberty quote that she gave us literally just a few months ago. She says, "Understand that when you have skilled individuals who see the future, who are indeed futurists, you are coming across a group of souls who are unusual, who are highly sensitive, who know exactly what must be done. And if they do not know, they train and train and train until they do understand. As a result of this, beloved, you are seeing this new paradigm and a total change in how the outlook of the organization truly is." And again, these quotes and these teachings that come in the midst of what we're doing are just so rich with light and understanding. Skilled individuals who see the future. And she says, look, this just, you actually go out and get training. You need some skill to develop the new community, the new organization that you're doing. This just isn't going to happen by some circumstance. Or, again, the myth that we began to look at the church, and this was, we go to the inner retreats at night. That's all we need to do, right? Underlying myths that sometimes, for some people, are pretty powerful. There are things that we need to do down here to make sure that whatever we're getting up in the inner retreats and in the inner schools, we can actually bring down here. And sometimes you need training to do that. And it takes discipline and it takes mastery in many of these areas. Now, in order to do this, and why the significance of this quote is for the following overhead that I'm going to share with you. And I'm going to step over here because I'm going to need to point to you, or point out some things on this graph that I think are important. Number one, the letter last night, by the way, from Teresa Harvey was just incredible. The issue of changes, the issue of pain being the ultimate joy of moving forth in the change, that we have to go through this. What this overhead illustrates here, that if we are to grow and mature as a community over time on this axis, there are some things that we're going to encounter. Number one, as we speak, this moment, the paradigm is shifting. There's a new way of thinking. There are new values. There are new principles that this organization will be running itself on. By the grace of God, your input and your heart flame, we will be moving forward. Now you see this little thing here. This is time. This is the end and the beginning. Right here. You see, when time is 0, this is where the graph is. You see that point right there? Everybody? Okay. What's happening there? Is growth going up or down? Down. There's actually a well-known phenomenon that when there are radical shifts or quantum leaps in thinking and new ways of doing things, that in general, things are going to get a little messy at first. Things are going to be painful. Things are going to be a little challenging for us to really begin to think in a new way and to do things differently as an organization. Now, what happens here is that you begin to see the rise up. In other words, you get through the neutral zone and you begin to understanding, my gosh, there's some power in this stuff. If we did this, we got together and we put our hearts together and our resources, we can make a significant difference. Now, the key thing on this overhead, though, is coming up here, which is very important. So we have the basic shift to a thinking of wholeness and understanding. What we begin to see here is that we can grow as an organization, but there's going to come a point that just thinking about this and studying our principles and values is only going to get us so far. What's going to begin to happen is that if we don't begin to practice new skills that the goddess of liberty is talking about, and train and train and train until we understand them, we will go back into another decline. And that's why you see the dotted lines here going down. And this is why spiritual community building is, in fact, a lifelong process. Then again, if you don't continue the practice and the mastery of the skills that you need in community building, you can get to another level, and you might do a lot, and you're growing more because you're maturing. But if you then don't look to the next changes, the inflection points that you need to internalize in the community, you can fail again. And this is why Scott Peck says this process is ongoing. You have to be vigilant. And ultimately, what we want to do is to be able to operate in this higher domain, because if we're actually embodying true community here because we have the discipline and the mastery, we can do a lot more for others because we're working together. We have the common bond, the shared vision, and moving forward. So the stages of maturing in a community have some very significant implications for us. We've got a journey that's just starting, and we've got a lot to do and a lot of maintenance that we have to keep up with in order to move forward in the new millennia. Now let's talk about the new initiative that we're here today to talk about. The purpose of our new initiative is the following: to facilitate and nurture the growth of local spiritual communities for the worldwide expansion of Church Universal and Triumphant. That is, in essence, the mission statement, if you would, of why we are here today and proposing to you this particular initiative. Now, last night, you saw for the first time the proposed levels of affiliation for the church. And I know for many of you, you don't remember 2/3 of what was said, because this is what happens when there's radical shifts in thinking and new models. You start to selectively filter, you forget things that you don't want to remember, and these things kind of happen. And I have seen this over the last year, even with my own team. And we'd have three meetings where we train on this one particular subject, and 4 months later they go, you know, we never had training on this. And I realized that it was a very substantive issue that had to require them to change. And what they did is they just erased that, because that was a very difficult time for them to begin to understand a new way of being a team member. Same thing is going to happen with us. We're going to have to revisit this. We want you to think about it. This is why we need your help, because you need to really process some of this. But one thing I'd like to point out to you that is going to be absolutely key in our growth and our development is going to has to focus right here in this quadrant, which is the community service quadrant. Do you remember what Deborah said about this particular area of affiliation? This is where members of our community who want to serve the community, whether it be hospice, whether it be decree leading, whether it be doing audio AV, whether it be giving a lecture, this is the key to the growth of this segment of membership, and certainly this to a certain degree. But our capacity to build a solid community and grow will be how well does this group of people who affiliate in community service internalize the new beginnings. Walk the talk, if you would. You heard that expression? You know, and some of the letters that Joubert and I are receiving are like, you know, there's a lot of talking and no walking going on. And to a certain degree, you're right. But you know something? There are a lot of people that simply need training. They're not out there with malicious intent to sabotage where we're going. Give them a break. Give our leaders a break. You know, our leaders that are in the field right now, I tell you, God bless them, because in the last year, I have never seen, I finally figured out what was going on. And one is, they're building and have built our organization literally trying to make bricks without straw, almost zero resources, and have done what they have done. They've done that raising a family, having a professional job, and dedicating whatever free time they have left to build and nurture our local communities. It's unbelievable. I mean, I just stand back in awe that they have done this on their free time. We have literally almost no full-time resource in the field growing our church. Do you realize that? it has all been on true, total volunteer service. I just realized this a number of months ago, and I was just taken back. And that clapping should go on for 5 hours, honestly, because you know, it really is. And I truly give honor and deference, and I'm humbled before the hard work and sacrifice of the dedicated souls that have gotten us here. And these are the people that are crying out, we need help, we need training, we need some resources, we need some full-time people to help us out, whether it's outreach or some secretarial work to keep the books up or things like that. We at headquarters have to figure out how we're going to do this and work with you in a partnership to crack that egg and make this happen, because if we can grow this at the local level, you're going to grow your local church membership, and you're going to provide a major opportunity for those that are looking for the path and looking for these teachings. So this initiative, to a large degree, is really dealing with some of the fundamental issues that need to go on in developing those that want to participate in this quadrant. And the number one skill and competency and training that they're going to need to have is, what is community building? What is it all about? How do you do it? How do I facilitate a discussion with 3 or 4 people? How do we come to closure in fundraising for a church or a chapel or a youth ministry program? There are a number of skills that are required in this quadrant that have to be internalized for us to be successful. It cannot be left to chance, and therefore it needs a specific system and initiative to make this work. Okay. Now the drum roll. What we have come up with, and I say we, and I truly honor the we that has been involved with this. There's been many hands and hearts and thinking that has gone into this, both at the ranch and friends and alliances and people that have been working with us on this, is a process that has a philosophy of empowering. We could have easily said, you know, we're going to spend $3 million and we're going to put 80 people out in the field, and they're going to go out and essentially fix your problems, and you have to take them. These are the people that are trained. You know, take them or leave them, but here they are, and approach it from a way that would not be in sync with our principles and values. In other words, accountability and responsibility. We had to figure out, wow, in the new day, in the new beginning, how would we structure something that's going to really fire up people, allow them the accountability, give them the responsibility for the change in their communities, and still make it work. And we play the role that we need to play, which is serving you. Not telling you what to do, or that you have to go build a church, or you have to hire a minister, or you have to do these things. What is it that your community needs? What is it that you, at the local level, are looking to do that you know that you need to do to impact the equation? So this is a beginning. It's not a perfect plan. It's here again for some refinements that we are going to make over the next 2 months, but it's a start. Phase 1. First of all, what you see here in the middle is we call community mentoring. And at the very center of this, we're calling this is a partnership. And you know, in a partnership, there's a mutual collaboration going on with what's happening. It isn't this is what's going to happen, this is what we're going to do to you. This is, hey, here's how we're going to work together, here's what we can do to make things work for you and your community. In phase 1, what we are talking about, and I'm going to walk through these very carefully with you so you can understand what's happening here. I'm going to go through real quickly as an overview so you understand at least the general sense. As I said before, the community service quadrant in the new membership model is critical. If that element of people who have passion and desire, that want to serve community, that want to understand the new servant leadership model, that want to build new skills that help grow groups and families and institutions and whatever, we need to really wrestle with the first thing on the agenda, and that is leadership. Because you know, when new people come in the door, you can have all the nice principles and values in the handbook, But if you're actually doing something that's different than what's being said that we believe in, you know what they're going to believe in? It's not the principles and values. They're going to model your behavior. They're going to say, oh, that's what it really is. That's what it really is your action and your behavior. Now, you got a great principles and values, but I can see that you obviously believe something else. So what we have to do is to understand that we really need to get in and do substantial training and education and team building in this whole area called servant leadership. So this is, in essence, the beginning of phase 1. Hold a second. I'd like to do right now, and I'm actually going a little bit out of order, I would like to play an excerpt from Lanello, where he talks about community. And in fact, he talks about this phase and this issue head on. And I'd like to go ahead and play that excerpt for you right now.
So then, in the matter of organization, this is a church that is a citadel of freedom. Each one of you is church, a citadel of freedom. What is the fire in the midst of your citadel? Tend it. Do not let it go out. Community is a very bad word in the circle of the fallen angels. They do not wish to see a community of light bearers succeed, for the community of the Buddha, the Sangha of the Buddha and the Dharma, present the equation of the equilateral triangle that is invincible, because it is a threefold flame. Wherever the communities have formed, round about the earth, on the surface, beneath the earth, on ancient continents and on other systems, the fallen ones have come from afar to snuff out that candle of community. Do you not realize, beloved hearts, that community is the answer to the problems of so many, of those in ghettos in every nation, and of the poor, and of those who can no longer afford to live in the cities of the world, much less in the country? Yes, beloved. Why do they not form communities? Because, quite simply, they argue about who is boss. They cannot even get along with themselves or the members of their own households. How can they band together by the hundreds and then the thousands to form a community where arms are locked and a mighty mesh of armor as chainmail is formed by the living bodies of the Buddhas and Christed ones and Bodhisattvas and babes in arms, all who have the fire of God within them and submit to holy purpose, to the indwelling God, and therefore, because all see the same all-seeing eye of God, all see El Moria, all know at inner levels what is the foundation and the bedrock of community. So the community is a strength multiplied, geometrized by the numbers within it, and by those of the hosts of the Lord who are enabled to step through the veil through you. You are not mere physical numbers. You are yourself, plus all of the angels and elementals and ascended masters who can work through you individually. Such is the multiplication of the community of the Holy Spirit.
Well, Mello, boy, who is boss? As you can see, he tuned right into it, and it's one of the issues that we need to understand, that if we look at the issue of servant leadership, it can truly and is the foundation of moving through a lot of our problems in our communities. Now, moving forward, I'd like to talk a little bit about phase 2 real quick, because again, we're going to walk through this. What does this mean? How is this going to work? What is this all about? In phase 2, we're talking about developing spiritual community capacity. In other words, right here, this is where the community is working together to build its mission, its plans, its goals, its strategies together. It isn't 3 or 4 people saying, this is what we're going to do, community, rally around it and move forward. This is the kind of phase where the community is collectively deciding its destiny. And it's done through a number of processes and collaboration that we're going to talk about in a minute. In the third phase, this is what we're going to then look at mobilizing community action. You can talk a long time about plans and goals and strategies, but you've got to get to a point where thought moves into action, right? And this is the phase, this is the return, if you would, on the clock, moving back to the 12 o'clock line, mobilizing community action. And to realize that this is where we've got to work together in a partnership to realize where are the resources, where are they going to come from, how can we partner, what are the needs, what are your priorities? Because out of phase 2, what you're going to say is, these are the priorities of my community. Whether it's a study group or a teaching center, those priorities might be a little bit different between each community. And in phase 4, we're calling this where we really need to look at sustaining our community. In other words, what are the true programs that are going to help us continue to grow and grow over time? For example, in phase 4, these are things where you've decided that the most important program or initiative that you have is that you need a physical church to come and worship, to provide the cradle for your growth. That's one thing. You might decide as a community that you might need a minister. You might need a full-time minister, and you've decided as a group that this is what you need, and these are the kinds of resources that we at church need to help provide and serve you with. Now let's move forward in talking about each one of these phases again. I first want to say that the foundation of this community obviously was built and still is continued to be built on individuals. In our second life cycle, we are the ones to make it happen. Mother and Mark started off, they were basically them and a very small group of people built this church. And through those individuals, there were formed more teams, and ultimately at the capstone of the triangleist community. And what you heard Lanello say in his excerpt, which I think is extremely profound, he brings in the concept of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And for many of you who are passionate about Buddhism and the Eastern teachings, as I am, it's always interesting because, remember what Lanello said, it's this equilateral triangle. It's the threefold flame that is, in fact, the power and the foundation of community. So the Buddha we see as the teacher, the Dharma, the teaching. And where we need to spend a lot more time is in this third area. It's the all-seeing eye of God at the top of this triangle is the Sangha. And that is the application of teaching in community. We really have to begin to understand that. What is the Master's teaching on community? What can we do to grow this community to make sure that this equilateral triangle has the power and is the foundation that's invincible, that will move us forward into the new millennia? And this is what our community building program is all about. Now, the Goddess of Wisdom gave us another quote here before we talk about this phase 1 that I thought was extremely powerful. She gave this on July 1st, 1990. Thus, beloved, whether or not this Church Universal and Triumphant, including its branches in teaching centers and study groups, does continue to thrive and grow and to expand, depends on an enlightened leadership that is full of compassion and the Holy Spirit, and that is careful before the power and the authority that it is given, not to abuse it and not to crush new souls on the path. I pray that you pray for the leader within you to rise up and take dominion, and that you surrender to that leader and to that law and to that justice, which is absolute and unerring of your karmic condition. I pray that you study the profiles of many successful leaders in every field and the books and courses of those who are professional teachers in these subjects today on how to be a good leader, a good administrator, how to be the servant who humbly remembers at all times that he is actually the employee of the Christ, of the ones whom he must lead. To me, the Goddess of Wisdom is describing very clearly servant leadership. Would you agree? There's no ambiguity in what we're talking about, but do you see where she ties our growth and our survival into our ability to understand this concept of servant leadership? It's dramatic when you think about it, a single issue of this nature. Now moving forward, again, in looking at where we are, you will see on this overhead something that somebody pointed out to me, by the way, when I was going through this. Oh, you got a mistake. You got a mistake. What's the mistake? And they said, oh, well, down here at the foundation of your community building process, the very foundation, what really guides us into the future are principles and values. Okay, you've seen the handbook, right? And we understand, wow, if we could internalize those principles, they are in fact what will guide us into the future. Every decision we make should be based on how integrated in sync is it with our principles and values. And then they saw this thing over here, culture of divine love. What's that? Well, that's not the same words. But I submit to you that it's one and the same. If you really truly meditate and understand that our principles and values, that if we outpicture those and we believe in those and we gear our behavior and our attitudes around, we in fact are building the culture of divine love. And as Saint Germain said, let this be known as a church of divine love. So what we have to do in this process that we're looking at, this is a lifelong process we're about to begin. This isn't an initiative that is going to start for 2 months and then end 3 months and think that you've arrived with community. This is what Deborah was talking about, that lifelong learning is in fact lifelong. And as we see this, as you understand the basic initiative we have here, is that we are trying to walk up and accelerate up the pyramid by looking at processes, what are the new skills that have to be mastered in the community. Because as we have more self-mastery, our community will grow as we begin to dive into each one of these phases that we're about to look at. So phase 1 is building local servant leadership. And what we're talking about here, and here's some goals that we have come up with regard to this. First, develop a servant leadership philosophy. 2, establish a committed body of servant leaders who have a strong sense of community in the culture of divine love. 3, facilitate implementing new membership structure and culture as a spiritual platform for growth. Now, I'm going to take just a quick moment on this last bullet to really indicate or talk about something that's extremely important. New membership is what Deborah talked about last night. But there is an entirely new structure that we must also design that goes along with that membership. And you'll be seeing more and more of this in the coming year, because we have to deal with structure and systems. We can talk servant leadership till we're blue in the face, but if our structure and systems don't facilitate the growth or support of community, all of this training will be for naught. So we have a major job in front of us that we're going to need your help on, and that is, how do we redefine our local communities? What is a church in the local community? We want to be more inclusive. We want to have the ability to have churches and have 501(c) status wherever we can get it based on the requirements that are required by law and what we can do, but we really need to restructure our systems in the field. How we elect leadership, how the decision making is made. A lot of that cannot take place right now because we're actually trapped in our existing bylaws and articles of incorporation. Do you realize that? And you've told us that too, believe me. And we realize that is one big gorilla that we have to wrestle with in 1998. But I wanted to point that out to you specifically because we're very aware of that. Now in phase 1, the process will look like the following. First of all, if we are invited and funds are committed to cover our expenses. I'm going to talk about this in a second. We will send community building facilitators to your city or town to assist and train your leaders and anyone interested in community building skills. There's a couple important words here I'd like to talk about. If we are invited. We feel that in the new day, in the new beginning, that it must be the entire community that has a desire to grow, a desire to heal, and they must come to a point of consensus that they would like to invite, help, trained, competent facilitators to come in to help this community building process. And that's what we mean by if we are invited. That there's a call from your community that says we need help, we want help, we love this training, we love this idea, can you come down and do whatever we can here? This is what we mean by being invited. We're not just going to make a program and just simply say we're coming, here's the date, accept it, we'll be there, get ready for us. That's the old way. That's the old day. We really want to build a partnership. We want to know that you have passion, that you're committed to build spiritual community. Because quite honestly, there are some communities right now that are not ready for it. They don't want it. There's a general consensus that things are okay where they are, and we don't want to get involved unless we can see the desire to understand what this vision is and what this community thing is all about. And the funds are committed to cover our expenses. What we're asking and saying is the following. We are willing to put up the people, the training, the workshops, the salary and the time in our partnership as part of our offering of resources to come out to your communities. But what we need help with are the expenses, the airfares, the food, the lodging, and that's all we're talking about, is really to meet our basic needs to have the capability of coming out to your community. And if this is so, we would like then, in the second part of the process, if there are funds committed, we're invited, we would come out over a 4-month period for 4 to 6 workshops to work with you and your community, those that are committed to change, those that are committed to this whole idea of spiritual community. We would love to come out and help you build your successful plans for your growth and facilitate, and will help us understand also what your needs are and gain a greater understanding of what's going on in the field by going through this process. Now, moving forward, the kinds of things that we would do in these workshops when we were out there would be the following. One, Deborah talked to you about this a little bit last night, is that we would like to go over what is this new Church Universal and Triumphant. When we realize that many people cannot articulate what we believe, what we practice, and what our faith is consistently with the same message, this is the kind of training that we would bring to the field. Is to really understand what is this message, what is our common vision, what is the communication that we share together. Secondly, the education and training would also be here, would be basically boot camp for servant leadership. You know, let's start at the beginning. Step one, square one. What is this thing? How do we go through this? And this is not a bunch of head-talking kind of workshops. We're going to get down and go for it. And for a lot of people, it's going to be a little bit painful, but it's going to be very exciting because the joy on the upside of this is phenomenal. The servant leadership basic training. Another area will be dealing with group facilitation. How do you run a community meeting? What are some of the basic things that can enrich the capacity of your community to come together, to think, create, and take action? And do it with as all compassion as you've ever experienced. Another area will be the art of dialogue. I've talked about this a little bit before, but this is really fundamental. If we don't know how to speak with each other, listen to each other, things will be marginalized as we move forward. And I remember that Livingston, this was the #1 issue for them. And I realize how important this is in our communications. And the last one is, we need some basic instruction again from the masters on what is compassion. How do we nurture new people? Because we need to understand that we have to give up some of the old myths and the old behaviors that we've had about fixing people that walk in the door for the first time. Okay, you know what? In universal fellowship, remember, there's no pledges, there's no requirements. What does that mean? I can smoke. In fact, I might be an alcoholic. But I have a desire to run and look and understand the teachings because I need some healing. And we've got people that are in pain that we need to pay attention to. And we need to figure out how are we going to deal and heal those light bearers and those souls that are looking for rest, they're looking for healing. You know, to come in and say, well, you're smoking and drinking, you can't possibly be part of our community. You know, there's an attitude that we really have to break here. So the outcome of all of this, you know, we've heard about outputs and outcomes, but essentially what we're looking for in this first phase is the following. We would like the involvement and ownership by the local community in helping build the culture of divine love. That's it. That's what this boils down to. All of this ritual and things that we would do and process and systems boils down to the fact that we really want to see local involvement. We want to see our brothers and sisters working together to rebuild our church and what we need to do with the action plans, etc., all founded on our principles and values and the culture of divine love. Phase 2. We've done phase 1, and if we've done our job from providing the facilitators, and we have demonstrated value to you, we would like to move forward to the next phase. And in this phase, what we would be doing, the goals would be building quality relationships through dialogue, learning, and trust, and other new skills. We'd like to establish strategies and goals that provide an environment for attracting new seekers. We need to figure that one out. What are we going to do? What initiatives? What can we do in the new day on a white piece of paper to attract these spiritual seekers? And finally, ultimately, phase 2 would manifest essentially a community action plan, a written document that has everybody's fingerprints on it, everybody's heartfelt discussion and ideas as to what are the priorities, what are the goals that you have as a community to move this church forward. You are the church. What are your priorities? What are your initiatives? We would like to see this as an outcome, as a document you can use to move forward in the coming years. The process in phase 2, as I said before, if you feel that you've benefited in phase 1 and you'd like to invite us back, we'd like to begin the journey for phase 2, where we will help facilitate in developing ultimately this community action plan with everyone who wants to learn and participate. And basically those are the requirements to move into this second phase, the desire to learn, the desire to participate. And we'll return then again for 5 to 6 more weekend workshops over a 6-month period. And the education, the training that would occur here would be, we would be looking at how to become an adept at change. You know, these transition processes are a lot easier if you understand the psychology and the issues that go along in your life when there are radical changes that are occurring. Secondly, we'd be looking at team building, be looking at participative decision-making skills, conflict management skills, understand the spiritual lifelong learning path, how to develop your mission, your vision, your goals, strategies, and action plans. Now, as you can see, developing your mission and vision, goals, and action plans, many of you want to move into that right now, but we're saying, wow, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you have to do to be really good at developing a mission with this collective collaboration and community. Now, the outcomes of phase 2 are a practical action plan to work together for a common cause and shared vision. And I emphasize practical, because we really need to understand what are the things that we can do now. What do we have? What are other resources? What can we use to move forward? Secondly, a passionate and committed community to implement its goals, dreams, and plans. Remember we talked about when somebody walks into your community, what do they feel? What's the energy that I feel in my community? And what we need to have is people that walk in that feel